Welcome to another How Not to Make Comics. I think I said that right. This is the 9th one. We're going to be looking at my 4th attempt at doing the 24-hour comic. And this time I have my setup that I really like. What I did was I asked one person in the room for a person, I asked someone else for a place, and I asked the third person for a thing. And yeah, it worked out really well. This trick for making it random is the same method I used for doing Longtooth. That one in this comic came out great. Spoilers. This was when I was still living in Chicago, so it was between 2006 and 2008. And we had an art group going. It was art night. We were also called the Chicago Irregulars, I think. Though I don't know if I should lump we into that, because I had to ask, what are the Chicago Irregulars? And Spike Trotman's husband was like, basically us. So I'm not sure if that mean that if art night and that was if I'm included in that us technically or not. So we were doing the 24-hour comic, and the only ones who were there was Dirk Tiede, who, oh my god, I am blanking on the name of his comic. I think it's Paradigm Shift. Yeah. It's good. It's really good. He's got a strong manga style, and the storytelling's really good on it too. It's not just the art. The writing's pretty good. And then Seth was there. His last name is like Frizzoli or something like that. He's got a very Italian name. Last I checked, he was doing a podcast called Indie Distro or something like that. And he's just a writer, so just a writer. So he was working on scripting his comic that he was planning on doing for a long time, and then and then Dirk's at the time fiance, but I'm sure they're married by now. Emily was there, and so Dirk, I think let's see here. I think he gave me Astro-naught, and I think it was Seth who said Ruined Castle, and then Emily, I know for a fact it was her that said an anti-werewolf. I can't remember if she said Uzi or machine gun, because I went Uzi. So I'm pretty sure she said Uzi. I should put a link to his 24-hour comic too. Wait, well, he has it for sale. But anyways, so he did one basically where they had to call in Dirk did one where they they call an exterminator, and then there's like mutant rats coming out, and because Emily's a laser scientist, he had it so they got like proton packs that she designed. So I'm only including that because I think it's funny that the laser scientist is the one who told me to do anti-werewolf machine guns or Uzis. I'm like 75% sure she said Uzi. Anyways, getting into the weeds there. So let's take a look at this comic. I used brown paper, the craft paper that comes on a roll, and a white and black color pencil. And I think it came out really well. We start out with the establishment shot of the ruined castle and the astronaut sleeping on like the wall or one of the towers. So he wakes up, he's trying to figure out where the hell he is, and he notices the Uzi with one shot taken out of it, or with the casing on the ground. That's one thing. I've seen a lot of artists do this, so I'm going to point this out. The casing doesn't shoot when you shoot a bullet, just the tip does. It's just the tip, ladies. So a lot of artists will draw like the casing. Like I remember there was that reboot of Transformers that was like really violent, and the cover has Optimus Prime, and he's got all these bullet casings in buried into the side of his head, and it's like that part of the bullet doesn't shoot. So I thought I'd point that out. Oh yeah, there's like a weird line running through these because I just used my regular desktop scanner. I did a version where I cleaned it up, but I lost the files, so we're stuck with these. Okay, so he's not really sure what to do with the gun, and then there's a howl. He looks at the gun, and then we see that there's some kind of wolf-like creature, and he aims the gun but decides not to shoot. So, I really love the storytelling on this, where I broke these like little panels. I did like an establishing shot basically, and did all these panels to highlight the astronaut jumping down. I forget where I got that trick from, but yeah, that is a cool way to emphasize an area and to show that time progressed. So he's falling, he reaches back for the little control arm, and he's got a jetpack. Alright, the drawing on this isn't quite as good as I remembered it being, but it's still pretty nice. I sometimes think about coloring this and doing like a remastered, because some of it's pretty solid. Yeah, I think that came out pretty nice. So he finds like a hut, and so he lands down. I had him doing a translation, even though it's because I think at this time I had read the book Timeline, and they were talking about how Old English is different than current English. So if you went back in time to like King Arthur's days, you wouldn't know what anybody was saying. Then this guy shoots an arrow at him, it bounces off, so then he's just strutting about. Oh yeah, this is this part's great. Okay, so he finds like a caravan, and where this like gypsy lady, it turns out that there's two of them, and they say he looks tired, so he enjoys some tea, and they're putting tea in quotes. And basically, he offers them money, and they don't really care about that, so they want silver or gold. So this is some clever shit on my part. I still think this is great. He uses the silver bullets to pay them, because they're made out of silver from the anti-werewolf Uzi. Alright, yeah, some of this drawing is not as great as I remembered it being, but like I said, it's still pretty good for me. Yeah, I wish I could say that. I mean, a lot of it's really solid, but man, the only thing I don't like is in a couple of these panels, I make the one gypsy, I made her shorter, but in this, she kind of reads as young to me now, like, yeah, which is gross. Yeah, so, that was not intentional. She was not meant to look younger. She was just meant to be shorter. That is so weird. Ugh. Anyway, so then I show the wagon rocking, and the translator is translating the "oh yes, yes, yes." Some silly shit. Yeah, I noticed that some of the detail also gets kind of lost on this. It's another good reason, another reason I thought about coloring it too, is that it would look a lot better if I did that. And I love this drawing of him strutting away. Whistling. Yeah, overall still really nice. I've tried working this way on other comics, and I've never felt like it came out as good as this, and I'm not sure why that is. So anyways, so this wizard, so the wolf is still watching him, and this wizard contacts him while he's whistling away still, and the wizard explains how it mistakes him for a knight, and saying that he should defeat the werewolf. And that was like his purpose here. I had an idea of tying this in with this other series I did, where this guy could switch places with himself in alternate dimensions. It's still a good idea. I just, I don't know. I haven't figured out what I'm gonna do with that idea. There's something else. I was also looking at how I like minimally used on the dome. I show like a shadow, and like I don't draw everything completely solid, which is like a shortcut I tried to do in the previous 24-hour comics, and I did it in a way that wasn't very effective. So on here it is. Oh yeah, and I know that this was intended to be part of that comic because he has a sort of a hexagon on his face. And I was thinking when I was designing that comic that would be like the commonality, is that like every version of himself would have kind of a hexagon shaped face design. I don't know if that makes any sense, but whatever. So yeah, more info dump. And then as he's getting the info dump, the werewolf leaps out, or at least large wolf. I wanted it to be kind of ambiguous whether it was an actual wolf or a werewolf, because the astronaut definitely does not believe it's a werewolf. The werewolf is trying to chomp through, but the astronaut's tech is so advanced that, you know, the werewolf can't chew through the gauntlet, and then the astronaut just flies up and stomps him once. So I just ended it there, but it's basically because since I didn't plan the story, I didn't like condense the storytelling down at any point. So I just kind of ran out of room for the story. Yeah, I would have had the fight go on for much longer, but I thought that this worked as an ending point, and just as importantly, complete success after 3 failures of the 24-hour comic. Though if you want to be generous, you can count the third attempt as actually a success. But yeah, after 3 attempts, this is my first successful one, and I think it's a good story. The art is overall okay. And I would say, I'm trying to decide if I would be happy if all my art looked this good. There's some really good pages in here though, like the first page, like where I put the ivy on the tower. And plus, I don't think I had a phone I'm trying to remember how good the browsers were back then. I know we could look stuff up, but I think I drew everything from memory. I don't think I could just look anything up. So I might have had to look up the gun that's on page 3, but the astronauts. Yeah, one thing I like on page 3, I even included the handle sticking up. Like, it's almost foreshadowing, you know, like, oh, there's a random handle sticking out of his backpack. What's that about? But yeah, the Uzi, I think I just drew that from memory too. So that came out. That was pretty good. There might have been a prop around because Dirk would take reference pictures. So yeah, so I drew the castle real good. I had a lot of detail in there. There's just a couple places where the proportions aren't great. I love on page 8, the way that shot came out. It's really nice. I found it really satisfying. There's some kind of goofiness on page 9. Like, the way he lands looks kind of weird. The proportions are a little off, but it's, you know, it's serviceable. Yeah, so one thing that is kind of interesting too on page 18, the way I use the 3 different values, because I have the trees, I use some horizontal lines to represent the trees, and then to fill in the darkness of the space, I went darker and I went at an angle to separate those, and I think it worked out pretty well. I just noticed too on page 18 he just throws the machine gun down because he's like considers himself done with it. Yeah, and then page 23, I'm not like super. I could have added more panels, I think, but I think what happened, if I remember on page 23, what happened was that I drew something and I couldn't erase it. So then I had to just kind of go with it. So yeah, so that's my only real problem with this comic, is that the fight was too short, and I think on that I wasn't sure, like I remember I was asking. Oh, I think Seth was helping me out too, so I should give him a shout out, because I wanted these comics to be all the same size, so I was hand drawing the rules on them, and I don't think I finished. And so I remember Seth was drawing just measuring out, you know, and drawing the lines at where the bleeds were for the page. So I'll definitely throw him a shout out for that, because like that was like another thing that bothered me with the last comic I did, was I didn't draw any bleeds on the paper or anything. So they were just kind of all over the place, like how big the comics were and how they filled out the space, and so these were more uniform. So that was an important step to making this comic a lot better. And I think for Longtooth I drew out all the lines ahead of time. I'm pretty sure I did that, because like if I was using regular comics pages, the bleeds and everything would already be set up, so I wouldn't have to do that during my 24 hours. So yeah, that was a nice event. And what was really nice about it too was that in that art group, I still don't have any following, and they're all like living off their art. They're either working for video game companies or you know, for the most part, most of the people in the group were like semi-professional, about to become professional artist and stuff. I was behind the curve on everyone else, and I don't want to put it in any way that makes it sound bad, like I'm, you know, smack talking anybody or anything, but it kind of made me an outsider because I wasn't viable for networking or whatever. You know, I mean, everybody was nice to me and everything. You know, I recognized that I wasn't seen as serious as everybody else, but it was pretty cool. From doing this 24-hour comic, Dirk was like, I see what you do now. Like, me and Seth helped him flesh out his idea of what he should do. And he's like, I don't know if I should take, you know, any of your, I don't even remember what details we threw him, because we were just building off of his ideas, you know. And I was like, you know, don't worry about it, man. We're friends, you know. So, but yeah, it was really nice to have someone who's like on that level be like, man, he got to see the way that my brain just generates ideas and my process and everything, and I gained his respect for it. So, you know, not only was it a big accomplishment because I did this 24-hour comic, but also I kind of got my recognition in that moment. So, you know, which is just a morale boost. So, and that's about it. Like I've had similar, you know, that's one thing that has really gotten to me over the years about not being successful is, you know, people do treat you differently when they don't see you as, you know, one of the more serious professional artists. And I've had the same thing with people here in Missouri, even though it's a much smaller community. But just stuff like, if there's an event with artists, no one thinks to contact me, be like, oh, do you want a table at this thing we're all going to? Or, there's been drink and draws that were like for the more serious people and nobody mentioned, said anything to me. So it's just one of those things. So, the reason I'm sharing that with people out there is that, maybe you're not as aware of the social dynamics going on. Be in that room, like the networking's important. There's plenty of professional comic book writers and artists who I think they've only made it because they're good at networking. And I'm not even saying that I'm as good as those people necessarily. I'm just saying that there's other people better than both of us who haven't made it. And it's networking is extremely important. Anything you can do to work with people. And I'm kind of a misanthrope, so, being... Even though I do have like a charisma about me, I do have a lot of antisocial tendencies and stuff. I don't value what people think of me as much as I should. Basically, when there's like opportunities to become closer with other people, I don't necessarily take them when other people would, because my brain just doesn't work like that. I don't need other people the way most people need people. I don't know. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I thought I would talk about it a little bit because it was apropos of the time in which I made this, and I make these, not just to show what I actually do wrong with the art, because there's only so many things I can point out. Like, I have certain weaknesses, and they're going to come up over and over again. And a lot of my career, if you want to call it that, has been looking for workarounds on those. The real workaround was that if Adderall would work on me and I could just like get really into doing a lot of detail or something. And I've never been able to sit that long. So this is like one of the things that so working in this way, where I'm trying to think about 3 values at a time, is always something that I focused on. Because with this, it's not just drawing a black and white drawing. It's how am I using the blacks? How am I using the whites? And so that's changed the process enough for me to where, I put some lines down and then don't want to go further with it. There's another reason I was working like this too that I should bring up. We're just starting to come around on digital stuff at the time. It's not quite. I'm trying to think of how it's different exactly. Okay, for example, like transferring data was a huge pain in the ass at the time. So we used to have these things called zip drives, and zip drives were not that big. Oh man, they were smaller than CDs. So I think CDs are 700 megs. I don't know. So anyways, I think it was only like 30 megs or something could be put on a zip drive. And for some reason, my computer at home, I want to blame Gateway Computers for this shit. They put something, or Dell or whoever, I think it was Gateway. I think I was in Gateway. But they tried some kind of anti-piracy software, and I know it would mess with my CDs. So if I copied sound files from a CD, they would come out really tinny. Like the CD drive worked fine, so I have to believe that they did something to try to prevent that, so it was really obnoxious. But if I transferred them on zip drive, the audio files would not get corrupted. So I can't prove it, but every single time I copied music off of a CD, it would do that, and which was really annoying because like most of what I was listening to were local bands in Chicago who wanted me to make copies of their CDs and the burned CDs for them. So anyways, and then my zip drive kept getting corrupted, and those things were not cheap. It was like at least $20 per zip disk, and my zip drive would destroy it. Every time I'd buy a new disk, it would destroy them. I think it was the computer, because I know I had more than one zip drive, and I don't know what happened to the first one. So I want to blame Gateway Computers for that. So that's why I'll never buy a Gateway again. And I've never heard anybody else talk about this, so maybe it was just something wrong with that particular computer, but I don't know what that would be. And it seemed awfully suspicious to me that it would do that specifically with copied CDs. But anyway, so moving large files around was a pain in the ass. And I have talked my way around that point so much that I don't remember where I was going with it. Yeah, I have no idea what else. I don't know if I just was starting to build an excuse or what it was. But I know what it was. My scans just always came out like crap, and I didn't like hatching because like
you would lose so much I would lose so much detail at the time with the scanners I was using. I don't know if I just didn't know Photoshop well enough to know how to fix things right, or if like they didn't have all the tools it has now. At any rate, I really didn't like the way the hatching was coming out. And the other thing too is I didn't know how I was going to print stuff, and so I was worried about doing zips and stuff, because if you printed it on a certain kind of printer, you might lose some of the quality. So I didn't like doing a lot of the shading techniques and stuff, and so I tried to do like a high contrast style with most of my work. But then as things got a little better and time went by, I started experimenting with things like this, where I could think about negative space in different ways, and I don't know. So basically, a lot of the things I tried to develop in my art to get around practical problems didn't really work for me. And I don't know if I just don't have, the raw talent for draftsmanship, or if I overthought everything and then like handicapped myself. So I hope that little rant was helpful. Until next time.